Okay, to Manchester United now, we've got a few updates to bring you. The club have held initial discussions with Burnley over a deal for midfielder Sander Berge. Now, it's understood that he wants to make the move to Old Trafford. They are also looking at Monaco midfielder Youssouf Fofana. They've also still got interest in Manuel Ugarte. Busy. All these deals, though, depend on players leaving. It's that classic transfers domino effect, isn't it? Okay, let's take a little look then at these options that they've got. We'll start with Ugarte. What do you make of this flex? Yeah, I think it's a profile of player that is massively needed in Manchester United's midfield. I think he brings dynamism, he'll bring athleticism, he likes to get after people and win the ball back as quickly as possible. He's been playing in the Copa America with Uruguay and played fantastically well, and we got to showcase some of his skills. I think for Manchester United now in midfield, with the rebuild of it, it's about, in my opinion, building it around Kobbie Mainoo. Of course, Bruno is the captain. Of course, Bruno has been there for a while. But if we're talking about the future of the Manchester United midfield, in my opinion, I think we need the perfect partner next to Kobbie Mainoo. That person needs to have great mobility. They need to be able to want to win duels and cover a lot of ground. Manchester United midfield has been so open and so exposed and players left on islands. We saw it many times last year, and Jamie Carragher on Monday Night Football and different times was highlighting that quite well, and Man United really need to fix that. So, Manuel Ugarte is somebody I think fits that profile of helping Kobbie Mainoo, because Kobbie can't do it all, Bruno can't do it all, and changing that midfield. I think the biggest thing for United in that midfield area is physicality. I think they're a bit of a soft-toucher midfield. Obviously, Ten Hag's strategy or tactic sometimes is to empty the midfield out. I don't know if he's going to continue to do that this season. We were speaking off air, and he said he has been doing it a little bit during pre-season as well. But I think you need someone then who can cover ground, and the problem that United have had is they empty the midfield and they're asking Casemiro to do 40, 50-yard sprints. That's never been his game. Ugarte prefers doing that. He wants to get around, and Tim Vickery was on the show yesterday, and he basically said he's a little bit like baby Javier Mascherano. Someone who wants to get around, makes tackles, wants to be aggressive, wants to get in the face of the opposition. I think you've lost that bite a little bit, and he probably brings that in. Okay, and then what about Mazraoui and De Ligt? Yeah, it's looking like potentially a double deal. Both players have reportedly agreed personal terms, and it felt like, especially with De Ligt, it felt like this was a fairly quick and easy deal to do. But it feels like Manchester United are waiting for dominoes to fall. We know that Manchester United are in a situation financially where they do need to sell players in order to buy, and I think that's what's holding these two prospective deals up. I mean, De Ligt, I think, is 24 years of age and has got a wealth of experience. And I think has been sort of harshly labeled as sort of maybe injury-prone or not quite up to it. I think there's a bit of a myth that he's gone to Bayern Munich and Eric Dier plays instead of him. It's simply just not true. He plays with him. It's actually with Pomecano, who's been out of the team, and Kim and Jae, who's been struggling. So, Manchester United needing reinforcements at central half, needing quality. It is another player that Erik ten Hag has history with. I was just about to say that, which seems to keep happening. But actually in this case, I mean, Ineos and the guys who made the decision there have sort of opted for Leny Yoro and gone for that type of midfielder, and Erik ten Hag still has transfer veto. He still has power. There's another misconception that Erik ten Hag's in the job and being kept on and he has no say. Just not true, and I think this shows us that. And the same with Mazraoui, history with Erik ten Hag. Ten Hag's phone book. Left backs, right backs. Exactly. But he reportedly wants to come to Manchester United, and again, we're hearing that Aaron Wan-Bissaka's move is maybe stalling to West Ham or maybe into Milan. But until that domino falls, then Mazraoui's deal is on ice. But you can clearly see what Manchester United's intention is, and I think those deals are just waiting to happen. We've heard from Florian Plettenberg quite a lot, who's very close to the situation at Bayern Munich, and he's explained it as just that. These deals are pretty much there, but Manchester United are waiting for outgoings. What about Jarrad Branthwaite? Would you want to see him? Manchester United put in 2 bids for Jarrad Branthwaite, but Everton are entitled to demand in excess of £60–70 million, as that's how much they value him, and Ineos and Manchester United clearly wanted him, but don't feel they should be paying that sort of price for Jarrad Branthwaite just yet. He's had a fantastic season in the Premier League. He's played in a PSV and he's been fantastic, but I think it's right for Manchester United to change their perception in the market. That has to happen. Ineos has a big job for Ineos to change the perception of Manchester United and say we're not going to pay over the odds for players that we don't believe are worth that valuation. Here's 2 bids. If you don't like it, no problem. We'll go a different direction, and that's what they did in terms of Leny Yoro. Never say never in football. Later on in the window, maybe they will go back in for Jarrad Branthwaite. I think he's a good player. I think he's great with both feet. He wants to initiate duels. He wants to win headers, and he wants to be on the front foot. I like him as a player. I think he can definitely add something to Manchester United, but for 60 to 70 million pounds, Manchester United have been there in the past with the likes of Harry Maguire. They've been there in the past with the likes of Anthony, where sometimes players don't live up to that valuation, and I think it's smart to not enter into that again. I think the key thing that Nolan said there is changing the perception. At the moment, I think Manchester United enter the market for a player. You often hear he's now £95 million, and that's because Manchester United have previously paid over the odds. They've put themselves in situations where we spoke about Casemiro off air and said overpaid and put him on a long contract, didn't know anything about his age, and I think a lot of players will also be going. I don't mind going there because from PS7 80 million, and it's a good deal for me and the wage is up, so I think it's a nice place for United to be where they're sort of going, okay, we won't have you, we'll have the plan B, which has never been the case. Certainly not in recent times. You haven't gone, we don't want the plan A, we'll just take a plan B and we'll make it work. Absolutely. The last one I wanted to ask about was Monaco's Youssef Fofana. What do you make of that? Again, we're talking about the profile of the type of player, of what's needed in the midfield. He ticks that box and he's only got a year left on his contract as well, so you're going in for a player who's very attainable. That's always a plus, and price-wise wouldn't be in the realms of the 60 to 70 million pounds that's been quoted for Manuel Ugarte. So it's another move that potentially makes sense for Manchester United in where they want to go in rebranding this midfield. Yeah, very much in the early stages, PSG are exploring the conditions of a deal for Jadon Sancho. He had such a wonderful impact last season with Dortmund, rebuilt his reputation if you like. We understand that he could be open to a move. Personal terms, we wouldn't expect those to be a problem either. Dialogue remains open between the two clubs, so I think this is one to watch as this transfer window progresses, because we are still very much in the early stages, but dialogue is open. We'll keep an eye on this. Right, I'm going to throw a pebble in the water. A spanner in the works here. They've got injury problems at centre forward. There's talk that he could do a job there, so they're not going to sell him now, are they, Mark? I think they're open to everything. We know that Manchester United's transfer strategy this summer is very much one in, one out. Of course, a sale of Jadon Sancho's nature would be significant, not just for finance, but of course the experience he has at first-team level, particularly getting to the Champions League final last season on loan at Borussia Dortmund. So if Manchester United were to let Sancho go, it would be because they had someone lined up, ready to rock and roll. We know that this is a very different Manchester United at the moment, and we've seen that already. Omar Barad has gone in there from City. We've seen Jason Wilcox go in there. Dan Ashworth going in there as sporting director. This is the first proper summer that Ineos and Sir Jim Ratcliffe have had full control over the football operation at Old Trafford, and you've seen a very different type of Manchester United, the way they've negotiated deals, the way they've approached transfer targets. They've not paid above and beyond. They are prepared to sit and wait, and the profile of players that they've got has been much younger than perhaps they've done in the past. So you pose the question about what happens with Sancho if he leaves. Do they have players? They've got injuries? Can they afford to let these things go? There are people at the top of Manchester United that are far more equipped than those in the previous windows to make sure they don't leave this transfer summer weaker than when they started it. He cost United £75 million. Are they expecting to get that sort of money for him now? Well, dialogue is open. I think it will depend on the price. It will depend on what's right for Manchester United. It will depend on whether Jadon Sancho wants to go there as well. As I say, they're exploring the conditions of a deal, so we're in the middle of this process right now, and this is one of those that could rumble on throughout the transfer window. There's always at least one player that we talk about a lot, and it could be Jadon Sancho. We've been talking about him a lot, haven't we? A lot of transfer windows. I think the most important thing for Manchester United, like you rightly say, they're not going to get back the £75 million that they spent and invested on him, but think what would they have got in January? It would have been £20 million, £30 million. Because of that successful loan spell, they're probably now looking at between £35 million and £45 million, maybe nudging £50 million, but it needs to have the right party at the table that are prepared to pay the money that Manchester United. The deal will have to be right for Manchester United. They're not going to give him away. So as I say, one to watch. City manager Pep Guardiola have all but said goodbye to Julian Alvarez. He was asked in the press conference before the Manchester derby, the Community Shield, and this is the transcript of the Spanish coach. This week, the club has agreed a fee with Atletico Madrid for Julian Alvarez. I guess it's a lot of money, but was it just too much to turn down? What are your thoughts on that potential deal? First of all, I want to say the gratitude from Julian. I've been 2 years here, we won everything together, and his contribution has been massive. Being part of the start 11 and not being part for sometimes in certain moments. It was incredible. He's incredible love with the team for his behavior. But like I said many times with the players, he wants to leave. He wants a new challenge. Atletico Madrid is a top club in Spain, in Europe, and when they suggest me through the club that he wants to leave, I said, it's okay if you want to leave. It was sad. Imagine to stay here when he doesn't want to stay. But at the same time, have to reach an agreement with both clubs. It's happened. Both clubs are happy. Wish him all the best. Looking forward to see him back, to say bye to all of us. Yeah, nothing more than that. So it was a joy to work with him. I learned a lot of him because the manager learned a lot with the players, and hopefully he can find what he was looking for. I think you've said that you would only go into the transfer market to replace a first-team player. Does this count as replacing a first-team player? What are the chances that you do bring someone in to replace you? I don't know yet. We talk every day, we see what happens. I don't know yet. Can happen, cannot happen, cannot happen. I don't know. Transfer updates. How close is this one, Tim? Moving in the right direction after positive talks between the two clubs. We touched on this a little bit earlier on, didn't we? Discussions are underway to finalize a fee and the payment schedule. City are demanding at least 5 times the £40 million they paid River Plate for him. Pep said at the weekend that he was expecting him back after the Olympics. Alvarez himself said he'd make a decision after the Olympics in Paris, but this one looks to be moving quite quickly now. And linked to this, Chelsea are in talks to sign the Atletico Madrid striker Samuel Mazraoui. Now the fee being discussed here is around £35 million. Any deal will depend on Atletico getting a striker in, so that's linked with Alvarez. He's a player with huge potential, still only 20. He's another that's actually featuring at the Olympics. He's playing for Spain. He spent last season on loan at Al Alaves. So yeah, exciting developments, and it is a bit of a transfer jigsaw puzzle when it comes to strikers. Yeah, and talking of that jigsaw puzzle, it's just going to be very interesting to see what happens now with Romelu Lukaku and Victor Osimhen, because a couple of weeks ago, there was the big deal we were potentially talking about. Romelu Lukaku going to Napoli on a permanent deal. They won around £35 million for him, but within those talks, Chelsea getting Victor Osimhen and Napoli wanted to have a permanent aspect attached to this deal. But given his release clause, I don't think Chelsea would want to go over £100 million. So maybe there was talk of a loan with an option that became an obligation in that deal. The reason Napoli would want a permanent aspect of that deal is because the wages that Romelu Lukaku is on are high. Victor Osimhen's wages are incredibly high as well. They couldn't have a situation come next summer where both Lukaku and Osimhen were at the football club. Now, because of these developments today with regard to Julian Alvarez potentially going to Atletico Madrid and Omar Odion coming to Chelsea, does that mean that the Osimhen Lukaku deal is not going to happen? Well, the information that we're getting is that those talks are continuing still because Napoli are desperate to sign Romelu Lukaku. Antonio Conte is their head coach. He managed Romelu Lukaku when Inter Milan won the Serie A title in 2020-21, and Lukaku was absolutely extraordinary, earned his move to Chelsea with that form. Whereas Victor Osimhen, Napoli do know that they'd have to offload him if they wanted to bring someone like Lukaku in, and maybe Chelsea can see an opportunity there by thinking, let's get him on loan first. Let's get an obligation in, and if they bring in a young striker like the guy from Atletico Madrid and Osimhen, maybe one can learn from someone like Victor Osimhen. So all deals look like they're on the table still for the Alvarez deal to Atletico Madrid, Samuel Mazraoui to Chelsea, and that potential deal that will see Lukaku go to Napoli, Osimhen potentially still go to Chelsea. Tim, apologies, I meant Alvarez was at the Olympics with Argentina. Luke, sporting director's view at City, how much of a problem is this for City, letting a World Cup winner go, knowing you've got to get a replacement and who knows he's going to be a backup to Erling Haaland? I think that's the issue they've got, that Alvarez will want to play, and I'm sure if Atletico Madrid are in for him, he'll have some certainties that he will be there. They will go there to be the main striker. The only thing that I would say with City is they're so good at what they do. They'll know who's coming already if Alvarez is going to go. I don't think it will hurt them too much, even if they have to get to the January window to get that replacement in, just because of the cover they've got and the way they play. We saw them before Haaland turned up play without a striker. So they will have their targets, and I only believe they'll let him go if they believe when their target is ready to come in. Here's what's trending in the world of football. This is coming from La Liga on Total Football, and a move that we knew was happening has now been confirmed by Barcelona, who say that Dani Olmo has joined them on a 6-year contract. Yes, he has signed until 2030. From RB Leipzig, of course, starred at the Euros for Spain, who ended up lifting the trophy coming in for Pedri when he was injured. And of course, as far as Dani Olmo is concerned, he knows Barcelona. He was part of La Masia. He was there between 2007 to 2014, after which he left ahead to Croatia and Dinamo Zagreb, won 5 league titles, 3 Croatia Cups and a Croatian Super Cup. That attracted the attention of RB Leipzig, 4 seasons in the Bundesliga, German Cup winner on 2 occasions, German Super Cup, and that was a 3-0 win against Bayern Munich in which he scored a hat-trick. So a man very much for the big occasion, but after 10 years away from Barcelona, he now returns. We understand the fee is £42.2 million, rising to £55 million. As I mentioned, it's a contract until the end of June 2030. So that's a 6-year contract. And his buyout clause is set at, get this, €500 million, €500 million, if you want to sign Dani Olmo from Barcelona. But his future is set. 6-year contract with Barcelona, having reached an agreement with RB Leipzig.